Say good morning again to each of you, and just to give you a little background of where I was this week, and sort of I think that's why this scripture came to my mind throughout the week. We've had my family and I have had a really busy sort of like 2-3 weeks here. And my wife and I even talking last week, not this current week, 2 weeks ago, we're just like, let's just get to like Sunday night and get some time to relax. And sure enough, Sunday night came and we had a little bit of time to relax. And then as the week progressed, there was a meeting that came up Monday, 2 meetings on Tuesday. My wife ended up with the flu, and so I took over going. My children, unfortunately, or fortunately, if you want to look at it, did not get sick. So they still had all their activities to go to. So I was taking them to all their activities. So that meant Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday was activities, Saturday morning, and still trying to take care of some things at the house. And I got to the point where I was just like, man, I began almost complaining. Like, this is a lot. And, in thinking and I even like trying to, we started my wife and I started a new diet, just try to make some of the things that are happening to me less severe. And it's really hard to start a new diet when you're not home to do anything. And we went shopping and picked out all the things we're going to eat and to cook. And I was like, well, I don't even have time to eat and go cook this stuff. And it was just a lot that was going on. And then, but I thought about that, like, why am I complaining now? Like, I've had such a blessed few weeks. I mean, I had the opportunity to go to Mesa and spend the weekend with the saints, and many of whom I had many conversations with brothers and sisters that if I have met them before, it was 25 years ago. And catching up with them and sharing stories with them. The one brother was Brother Jeremy would remember this. He was the brother that sort of met us at in Tijuana and took us in the Conference of the Americas. And I was with him, and we were good. The other group was not with him, and they got completely lost and never made it to their destination. And talking with him and meeting his children who are baptized, and it was just a blessing. And then last weekend having the opportunity to be with the couples of the church, I put it that way, married couples, and having relaxation and time with them and spending seasons of worship with them, even in the sense of where it's not typically a church service. I've had these blessings. And then here's this week where it's been a little tough for 1 week, and I'm already complaining about everything that's going on. And so I'm going to be in Exodus 16. And I think you can sort of see where I'm going to come from if I'm talking about me complaining this week, and we're in Exodus. And here's the children of Israel. And they have been liberated and taken out of their captivity in Egypt by the hand of the Lord. And I'm just going to start here in the second verse. It says, "And the whole congregation of the children of Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And the children of Israel said unto them, Would to God we had died at the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, where we sat by the flesh pots, and when we did eat bread to the full, for ye have brought us forth into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger." So they recognize sort of where they're at and what has been done for them, but in the same moment, it's not just that recognition of what the Lord has done for them. They said it was better if we had just stayed there. Instead, you've brought us to this place, this wilderness, only to watch us all die because of hunger. And, how quickly us as natural man get to that point. We heard a lesson this morning from our brother that talked about faith in the trial. It's when those trials happen that, even as our brother said, we tend to think, is the Lord even there? When this morning he was talking about them in the boat, and they went to the Lord, who was with them in the boat, and questioned, Lord, do you even care that we're going to drown? And we heard the Lord's response, and I even thought, right before that that response and that where our brother was reading, it was read this morning as well. But it says that they went in a sort of a larger boat. It was the Lord and disciples, and I imagine some others at that point. And it says around them were a number of smaller vessels. Well, those smaller vessels would have been experiencing that same exact storm that those in the boat had. But at least those in the boat knew that the Lord was with them. And they had the opportunity to go to the Lord and to, at this point, question Him. It wasn't necessarily a prayer. It wasn't necessarily do something. It was like, why aren't you doing anything? Why are you letting this happen? We do have that opportunity. We have the relationship with the Lord that He's there with us. Unlike those that were in that boat, the smaller vessels around that boat, that didn't have the Lord with them. And I can only imagine what they were experiencing, the fear that was upon them, and I'm not even sure they all made it. If this boat was close to being sunk, it says that the waves had battered so much that the boat began to fill. And what was happening to those that were around them? That didn't have the capacity, didn't have the size, the ability to withstand the storm like that larger one had. And how quick we get to that point as our nature. We come to this when woe is me. Not realizing that the Lord has directed us and put us to this point in our lives. The Lord directed them in that boat. The Lord was pushing them. He was right there with them. And so we see this happening here. The great miracles that were performed to bring Israel out of Egypt and to get them to this point, and they're complaining that they don't that they don't have enough food. We say it was better when we were there. At least we had the meat to eat that was left over. At least we had the care that we needed to receive at that point. And the story continues, and this is going to be in the 9th verse. It says, "And Moses spake unto Aaron, saying unto all the congregation of the children of Israel, Come near before the Lord, so He hath heard your murmurings." So Moses tells Aaron to gather the congregation together because the Lord has heard them. And He hasn't heard their plea, their cries for assistance, their prayers for help. He has heard their complaints. And this is what He does when he has heard them, because of the love that He has for Israel. It says, "And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, I have heard the murmurings of the children of Israel. Speak unto them, saying, At even ye shall eat flesh. In the morning ye shall be filled with bread, and ye shall know that I am the Lord your God. And it came to pass that at the even the quails came up and covered the camp, and in the morning the dew lay around about the host." So as an answer to their murmurings, to their complaining, the Lord provides them. It says that the quails came and were all about the camp, so they had the flesh that they desired to eat that evening. And then in the morning as they arose, it says that there was this dew upon the earth. It says, "This is a thing which the Lord hath commanded." Well, and in between that, it says that as that dew would sort of go away. And I think we've all seen that heavy dew. It almost looks like it's covering everything, right? It says, as that dew started to go away, as the sun came up and sort of evaporated it, and the left behind were these little pillows almost. and we know the story, it's manna that it was left behind. It says, this is the thing which the Lord hath commanded. Gather it every man according to his eating, all an omer for every man. According to the number of your persons, take ye every man for them which are in the tents. Notwithstanding hearkening not unto Moses, but some of them left it. Well, I'm sorry, I'll get there in a moment. So he tells them to gather it. Gather what is required of every man. What you will eat, what you will partake of. And then gather it for those that are in their tent, those that your family, those that don't have the ability to go do it, maybe the children, or maybe the elderly, whatever the case is. He tells them even how much to gather. And they have this measurement. And he tells them to partake of this. Each and every morning you are to do this. And children of Israel did so, and gathered some more, some less. So gathering more above that measurement, gathering less below that measurement that the Lord had given him. It says, and when they did meet it with an omer, he that gathered much had nothing over, and he that gathered little had no lack. They gathered every man according to his eating. And Moses said, let no man leave it of it until this morning. He commands them. He said, this is to be done each and every day, and let nothing be left behind. Don't gather more and say, well, I will save it. It says, notwithstanding, they hearkened not unto Moses, and some of them left it until the morning, and it had bred worms and stank, and Moses was wroth with them. So again, they're in this position because they complained to the Lord that they didn't have food. So the Lord provides them with quail and provides them with manna. And he sort of gives them some directions and commandments even as to what to do with the manna. How much they're to gather, how they're to gather, and to make sure that you don't take more than what is required. And I can imagine that, I'll be much like this. Well, I'm going to gather a whole lot more today because I feel good. You think the first day this happened, you had all kind of quail the night before. You're feeling good, you're feeling full, energized. You wake up in the morning and you've been told to go gather this, don't take too much. And so, I'm feeling good, so I'll save myself some time. Maybe I won't feel as good the next day, or maybe I just want to be lazy the next day. I'll just gather what I want right now for the next couple days. But that was not what was commanded of them. And it did so, and those that did this found that the next day, their plan was brought to nothing. It says because the manna was full of worms, and it stank, and it was rotten. It says, and he said unto them, this is that which the Lord hath said, tomorrow is the rest of the holy Sabbath unto the Lord. Take that which ye shall take today, and see that ye will see, and that which remaineth over, lay up unto you, and keep until the morning. And they laid it up until the morning as Moses bade, and it did not stink, neither was there any worm therein. And Moses said, eat that today, for today is a Sabbath unto the Lord. Today ye shall not find it in the field. 6 days ye shall gather it, but on the seventh day, which is the Sabbath, in it there shall be none. It says, and it came to pass that there went out some on the people on the seventh day for to gather, and they found none. It laid it out very clearly into them. And again, I try to put myself in this situation. If I'm one of those ones that took an abundance of one of those days in the hopes that I wouldn't have to afterwards, and now you have Moses saying to do that, take your abundance, take twice the amount you would need on the day before the Sabbath. That way, when the Sabbath comes, that you don't need to gather, because there will be none there. That is a day given unto the Lord, and all that is done that day should be pleasing and thoughtful of the Lord. And I'd be thinking, well, I know what happened before. When I took it before, it all went bad. Why wouldn't it go bad the next day? Why, if I took double on Saturday, why wouldn't the expected amount that I had kept for Sunday go bad? Because that's what had happened before. And the Lord set this up for this obedient nature of them to follow. It was not in their nature to be this way. They question, they wonder. I want to go back to what the Lord had done for them. And their complaints of their needs, the Lord had given unto them. Even told them, listen, I'm going to give you things. I'm going to give you what you stand in need of, but there's still a requirement for you to do some sort of work. I still need you to gather. I still want you to do these things. Recognize each and every day the gift that is given unto you each and every day by this man. And you're to gather it, and it will fill you that day, but the next day you're to do the same. And for 6 days, I want you to do that. For 6 days, I want you to work to remember what I have done for you. And on the 7th, I want you to not worry about the natural things, to not worry about where you're going to find your food from, to where you're going to find these things. I will change the pattern that I have set before you, and that this manna will spoil. And on the 7th day, it will not. And you can partake of it. And your efforts that day belong to me, and serving me, and remembering me. And I talked about sort of my nature if I was put in this circumstance. And how I would probably be one of the ones who would just sit there and gather as much as I could that first day. And what's that show? That shows my own pride and greed. That the Lord had laid out a perfect plan, a perfect way, that I could find the needs of my life before me, and yet I myself would think I have a better idea. I would take those and I would gather it in the hopes that in the future maybe I wouldn't need to. And that's what the Lord was sort of pointing to them. Like, if you become this type and shadow, this nature of man, if that controls your life and controls who you are, and then the things I give you in this life won't be enough for you. And you become full of pride, full of greed, thinking, I want more, I want more. And even as much as the Lord has given unto us and keeps giving to the children of Israel at this point, each and every day supplying them with this miraculous gift, that as the dew disappears in the morning, they're left with this perfect food. Gives them of the sustenance, and they don't even have to go look for it. They don't have to go find avenues to capture it. It's simply with them amongst the camp. That I want you to work. I want you to rely on the gifts and to use the gifts I've given you throughout that day, and to make sure that each and every day you work to acquire them. That you are obedient and following me. But there's going to be a time and a place when I don't want you to do those things. And what I want you to do instead is to praise me, to worship me. And that's what that Sabbath was created for, and that's what that understanding was given to them. Even in that opportunity they had to collect that manna, and then, as had been done in the past, that manna was no longer going to spoil, but would hold itself over into that next day. That way they could solely focus on praising the Lord and all that had been done for them, and going through the worship that was required of them, and the needs that were required of them on that day. That day the Lord was taking care of everything for them as they worshiped Him. And even this week, as I struggled in those things, to take care of the natural things of life, I sitting last night and trying to fall asleep and think of these things. I was trying to struggle to think of what to cook. Trying to struggle and taking care of the needs in my home, the physical needs of my home, laundry, cleaning. Yesterday I took a shower in the morning before I had to take my daughter, and the shower backed up and it would not drain. So I came home from taking her to the dance, and then I worked an hour to try to get everything drained. And these things that the Lord has given us, sometimes we look back and we say, man, this has become a hindrance. He's given me a great house. Well, what do I have to do with that house? Sometimes I have to upkeep it, and then I complain because I have to upkeep with that house. I remember one day I came home from shopping, and I opened up the fridge, and this was a couple of years ago, and I sat there and I was like, I don't have any room to put this food in my fridge. Well, thank the Lord that I don't have room to put this food in my fridge. I mean, this is who we are. And I think I was at Roscoe the next day, and I turned it into a sermon because of the impact it had on me. Because there's others out there who don't have that opportunity. There are others out there who don't have a house that they have to take care of, that was given to them as a gift. There's those who've prayed that the Lord would give them a home, give them a spouse, give them whatever in their life, a job, all these sort of things that they seek after in their lives so that they could then do the things of the Lord. And then what do we, as in our nature, is we take those things, and at times we say, man, it's so important that I focus on those, and at times then the Lord becomes a second focus in our life, or further down the list. And the Lord is giving them opportunities here to say, yes, there are things each and every day I'm going to give you, and there's some work that you have to do in those. But there will also be a time when I will take care of everything for you, and I want you to remember that. And I want you to prepare for that. And then when that Sabbath day came, they didn't have to do any work. They didn't have to go out amongst the camp to pick things and make sure they had enough, or make sure they didn't have too much. But the Lord preserved what they had gathered the previous day, kept it for them, and allowed them to focus their efforts that day on serving Him. And there's opportunities we have each and every day to do exactly that. To take time in remembrance of what the Lord has done for each and every one of us. For the gifts He's given us, and for the things that we have to do in working with those gifts. Even the spiritual things that He has given us, the spiritual gifts that He's given us. We've been giving those that we might edify each other, and that they might be used to praise Jesus Christ. But there's an expectation to do something with them. There's an expectation that we actually have to work towards them and work with them. And I thank the Lord that He gives us these things. And yes, at times we're going to be the children of Israel, and we're going to murmur, we're going to complain, and we're going to wonder, is the Lord there? We're going to wonder, is there a better way? We're going to wonder, why is the Lord even doing this? And just as was said at the beginning of this, as Moses gathered and told Aaron to gather the children of Israel together, it says the Lord heard their murmurings, even heard their complaining. And what did He do with their complaining and murmurings? He gave them that which they stood in need of. And asked them, if I give you these things, I want you to be obedient in them as well. I want you to work with them and follow what I've given them. Follow the instructions that I've given you with them. In the hopes that one day we can just be together and not worry about all the other things in life, but we can have our Sabbath together with the Lord. And I felt that this week. I felt that in the last couple weeks. You know, when my wife and I said, let's just get to Sunday, it wasn't Sunday because it was a Sabbath. It was Sunday because in our mind, we said, we're all done. And the Lord had something else in store for us. No, I wasn't done. And I thank the Lord that He hears us in our murmurings. He hears us in our complaining. And He loves us still and gives us what we stand in need of each and every day. May the Lord bless you.
The message this morning, I think, is very important for each of us. You know, the Lord provides. If I could sum up what was said this morning, despite at times how we approach Him, the Lord provides. And He has from the very beginning. And it's so interesting when you get into the story of Israel, you see God's long-suffering and patience and willingness to provide and provide and provide. One, because He had made a covenant. Two, because He loved them. And three, because He desired good things for them. And that combination of factors led to these occurrences over and over and over again in the story of Israel, that God would provide. And at times they would very quickly backslide or forget, as a reminder to us how easy it is for us to do the exact same thing. If you go one chapter earlier, there's an interesting again, you go one chapter further, you have Israel praising God, you have Israel murmuring against God. Same chapter. You go to the 16th chapter, you have Israel murmuring, God providing. It's over and over again. But in the 15th chapter, it starts off with Israel and Moses writing this song to God about His great providence and how much He has delivered them, how strong He is. And then 3 days they go into the wilderness. Right? So it's Monday. It's now Thursday. They've been traveling 3 days, and guess what? No water, they're upset. 3 days, Monday to Thursday. As our brother's example, got everything ready for the week, get into the week, now it's Thursday, where's God? He just took us out of Egypt, we sang praises to him, missed the meeting on Wednesday night, now it's Thursday morning, we're upset. You get to the end of that chapter, and it says, so Moses brought Israel from the Red Sea, and they went out to the wilderness of Shur, and they went 3 days into the wilderness, found no water. And it says, when they came unto Marah, they could not drink the water, for it was bitter. Therefore the name of it was called Marah, which means bitter, and the people murmured. 3 days. Our God is so great. Now we're going to murmur. And they cried and murmured against Moses, saying, what shall we drink? And Moses cried to the Lord showed him a tree, which when he cast into the waters were made sweet. And it says, there he made for them a statute and an ordinance, and there he proved them. So God takes this opportunity, one, to provide, as they start their journey, and their murmurings already, and he tells them, if thou wilt diligently hearken to the voice of the Lord, and will do that which is right in his sight, and will give ear to his commandments, and keep all his statutes, I will put none of these diseases upon thee, which I have brought upon the Egyptians. For I am the Lord that healeth thee. Not just provides, but heals. And he gives them this example here. And of course they missed it. You go into the book of maybe Hebrews. I'm not 100% sure. I was confused. Paul writes this, and he gives this example, and he says, and unto them in the wilderness was the gospel given, and they rejected it. And Paul was talking about the children of Israel when they had wandered in the wilderness. He says the gospel was given to them. That providence was given to them. God makes an ordinance and a statute right then and there with them, and says that he will heal them. They didn't understand. Because it goes on further. As they have this sacrifice given, this tree is thrown into the water, and the waters that are bitter are made sweet. And he covenants with them here, not only that he would provide for them, but that he would heal them. Then what does he do? It says, and they came unto Elim, where there were 12 wells of water, and 70 palm trees, and they encamped there by the waters. What was he showing them? Showing them the church. 12 wells of water, 70 palm trees. He was showing them, allowing them to be given the opportunity to accept his healing. There was a time and point in Christ's life where he prayed to the Father. What were his words? Let this cup pass from me. See, Israel was not able to drink of the bitter waters. There was only one who could. And when he did that, it became what? Healing. And he established a manner in which men may receive his gospel. And he set up an ordinance where there were 12 apostles, 70 evangelists, and the waters of life available. And that ordinance still stands today. Despite Israel's murmurings, that ordinance still stands today. Despite our shortcomings, where we find ourselves on Thursday morning, that covenant, that ordinance that God can and will heal still stands today. He doesn't change. It's never been different. It was no different for Israel in the wilderness than it is for us today. They had a journey God provided early on, showed them how to rely on Him. God has provided for each and every one of us. It is very easy for us to turn, for us to forget. And it's momentary. It's frustration. It's anger. It's depression. All of these things that get us so quickly. 3 days in, Thursday morning, where do you find yourself? Do you find yourself murmuring? Or at the sweet water, 12 wells, 70 palm trees. You got water, you have shade, you have healing. That's where we should find ourselves. That's where Israel should find themselves. That ordinance still stands today. It was restored in 1830. It still stands. God doesn't change. God has provided. God will provide. The Jaredites went over in the boats. It says they knew the journey was difficult. I don't know that Israel believed the journey was difficult. I'd have to look back. I can't quote off the top of my head. I don't believe at any point Israel was told that this is going to be horribly difficult, because realistically that wasn't God's intent. His intent wasn't for them to be lost in the wilderness. His intent for them was to go through the wilderness onto Jericho and inherit the land that was promised. When the Jaredites went over in the boats, you read in Ether, they were told this is going to be difficult. You're going to be dashed, flipped upside down, many, many days, many months on the water. I will provide for you. And what you find in that journey, what did they do? In the midst of all of that, did they murmur? No. It says they sang praises to God. And He delivered them. Life is a journey. God does not promise that everything will be fine. That was never what we signed up for. God promises healing. He doesn't promise that we won't need healed. God promises us that He will be there, not that we will never need Him. God promises us that He will deliver us, because He knows there will be times when you need deliverance. Each of us stand in need of this very thing. And God has provided it. Through His Son, Jesus Christ, we have the teachings and the ordinances. You know, sometimes we can compare ourselves to other churches, and we do so not to put others down, but understanding as the church of Jesus Christ, the things that we do here are what God and His Son Jesus Christ best determined were helpful and needful for us to be sustained through life. When we partake of sacrament, the Lord's Supper, He knew what was necessary for us. To be reminded as often as we got together of the sacrifice and the love of Jesus Christ. When we participate in the ordinance of feet washing, He exampled that to his disciples so they would understand the idea that to be a leader, impactful, did not mean to be above anyone else, but to be humbled and a servant. And that in love and service to one another, we find ourselves reflecting Christ. And it's that only through that humility is He able to move through us. As we are sick and in need, we come before the ministry because God showed us in the Scriptures it's needful. And that the prayer of faith will heal the sick. So through all of these things that God has provided, He has done so because He knew it was necessary. That we would rely on these things. Not to murmur, but to embrace each and everything that comes. And when it does come, that we would rely upon what He has established for us to move forward in those things. That we would rely upon one another, rely upon the church, as we all rely upon Jesus Christ. That we would not be like Israel, so quick to forget. So quick to turn around and look back. But that we would understand what the Lord has done for each and every one of us. Understand what is available to each and every one of us. To embrace those things as often as necessary. I still remember as a young individual the example of some of you knew Anthony Gailey, some of you didn't. Rita and Dennis Gailey's son. He had cerebral palsy, right? Or no, spina bifida. Spina bifida or cerebral palsy? Anthony Gailey.
Spina bifida.
Yeah, it's spina bifida. And I remember going to Greensburg as a young individual, 10, 11 years old, knowing Anthony and his life and every opportunity he had, every time he was at church, he was anointed. Over and over and over. He would not stop. And eventually, he was healed. Not in this life. He lived out his life as God intended. He was an example to me as a young person of faith and perseverance. But his life was short. Because God did not promise him that he would be raised out of his wheelchair. But He did promise him he would be healed. And he was. Today, he doesn't deal with that anymore. God wants us to rely on Him. He's established these things and these ordinances that we would rely upon Him. He's given us all of these things, knowing that we are going to go on a journey. And that only through faith and perseverance and reliance upon what He's established, in humility, will we be able to have joy through those things and not murmur. May God bless each and every one of you.